Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Winning Drive podcast. I'm Reeta, the Hubbard. Let me start.
The Hubbard.
I was about to do my gridiron gal shtick. All right, let me start this over. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday, and welcome back to the Winning Drive podcast. I'm Reeta Hubbard, the NFL chick, co-host of the Glenn and Reeta Show on 105.7 The Fan, with my guy Cordell Woodland from Shaking It Up Sports and the Ravens reporter for 105.7 The Fan. And if you can see us on YouTube, you can see my guy is at the castle right now doing the hard work for Odyssey and 105.7 The Fan. We appreciate you, Cordell. So, Ravens, we know, locked up the number one seed as well as the AFC North division. And we are into week 18 as they are hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, as we know by now, John Harbaugh has come out and said that Lamar Jackson will not play. And there are going to be a plethora of other guys that will not be playing. So the conversation that has been, I think, a big part of the chatter is, do you take the rest versus rust? And in this case, it feels like Harbaugh is taking the rest, and the rust, he is just going to take the chance on that. I want to know your thoughts, Cordell, in terms of the decision making here. Do you like the idea? I want to bring in the fact that there will be bad weather on Saturday, I believe, when game time. Some people are saying snow, some people are saying rain. They're saying that Baltimore is on the line between snow and rain, so probably some sleet there. So given that information and knowing that the Ravens have already solidified their spot in the playoffs, how do you feel about this decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one that maybe we think is a bigger dilemma than maybe they think. I think it's probably a simpler process for them than it is for us. But it's our job to kind of analyze the totality of the situation. I think rest versus rust is tough because people assume that when you rest, it comes with rust, right? And I don't know if the two are necessarily married to each other in every case. I think it's a situation by situation basis. You know your team. Can your team handle that? And for the record, I do believe we're going to see more starters playing than maybe people think. Or, probably not the whole game, but I do think we're going to see probably
Couple
more
series
starters
here
than
and
we
there.
thought. Yeah. So you mentioned the weather, those are all the factors. But look, if you're the Ravens, number one thing you're worried about right now is being as healthy as you can going into the postseason. That is the number one thing. With one regular season game left, you've already accomplished everything that you can possibly accomplish in the regular season, including some individual stuff with people like Lamar Jackson, who's probably locked up the MVP. I just think you've done so many good things to this point in the season. You've had an incredible year so far. To put yourself in a position to lose a potential key player in a meaningless game for you would be hugely impactful for this team going forward. So I think that's what they're worried about. Like I said, I still expect some starters to play, but I think that they're going to try to keep guys as healthy as possible by the time this game is over.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to look at it like this. The Steelers are still scratching for a spot in the playoffs, so they're going to bring their A game as they move, and trying to move into the postseason, which means guys like TJ Watt are going to play at their highest level, and other guys on that team. And I'm just not willing to risk my quarterback for that because it's a rivalry game. There's a lot of people out there that's like, oh, but it's the Steelers. Are you worried about the battle or are you worried about the war?
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I don't know how to put that in any other context for people to understand that this is just one part of it, right? Or are you worried about the sprint or the marathon? If you want to go something a little bit lighter, right? Do you want to worry about the sprint or do you want to worry about the marathon? I'm not worried about the sprint. I'm worried about getting to the end of the line at the marathon. You know what I'm saying? And so worrying about the Steelers because they're a division rival. Obviously, if something was on the line, this is a completely different conversation. There's nothing on the line here. So who cares that it's the Pittsburgh Steelers? If they win, the Steelers, and they want to brag about, sweeping the Ravens. Okay. Like, good for them. I don't know. I mean, I don't think that there's anything of that. Added the fact that the weather is not going to be good, I just think that you just have to make sure that you preserve the people that you feel like have the best chance of helping you win 2 weeks from this weekend. So I think that this is a good idea. I think that also, Cordell, a lot of hesitation about this decision comes from what happened in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
We know that they got a bye in 2019. We know that they were able to chill, because they were 14-2 back then. But I don't consider this team to be the same. They're not the same. The personnel is different. There's 2 different coordinators now. There's different parts now. Lamar is more mature. He was only a second-year player in 2019. Now he's, a 6th-year starter. So I don't know why we can't put that to bed. And Lamar even was asked about that. And he was just like, we got to let that stuff go. And he's right. We do have to let it go. And that includes understanding that everybody that's on that team knows what the goal is. And thinking that they will be complacent or be rusty, I think is not giving them enough credit. Them being the players, them being the coaches. I think that they're clearly aware of what happened the last time, but they also understand that this is a different makeup and that they have to do what's best to preserve their best players in terms of having a deep playoff push. So I have no problems with the Ravens putting their guys on the bench and having somebody else come in. We'll talk about Tyler Huntley later. I mean, who's to say that the Ravens are going to lose because guys are not playing?
The last time this happened in 2019, where the Ravens played backups and included their backup quarterback at the time, RG3, they beat the Steelers. So it's not to say that they can't go out there and win this game, even still. And I would also say, to your point about comparing to 2019, is not only is this a different team, but people have to get out of this idea of, because whatever they think didn't work in 2019, you're going to do the opposite. That's not the formula of success. That's like going and putting together a parlay, and you got 5 bets on there, and then you make another one with the opposite of all those 5 bets. You could lose both tickets. You know what I'm saying? In theory, you could lose on both. So I think that this is a situation where people just have to understand that. Look, they didn't get knocked out of the playoffs that year because they rested guys. That's not why they lost. And I think John Harbaugh was on point when we spoke to him on Wednesday about that people need to kind of go back and rewatch that game. The Ravens had over 500 yards of total offense in that game. I mean, they lost because they couldn't finish drives in the end zone, and they weren't able to capitalize on big plays. Oh, and they couldn't stop the run. I mean,
couldn't stop big plays either.
couldn't stop the big plays. I mean, and that wasn't a team that was built to play from behind. And this one, at the same time, hasn't played from behind a lot, but we have seen them come from behind, and I think that their makeup is better equipped to play the style of play that postseason football needs you to play. Because in the playoffs, teams are looking to take away what you do best, which is what happened in 19. And the Ravens weren't equipped at the time to counter that. They weren't equipped to become some out of nowhere, this great passing offense. And not to say that they're a great passing offense right now, but they're good enough in the pass game. Yeah, very efficient. And they're good enough in the run game by far to be able to beat you any way you want on the offensive side. So, I mean, I don't, like I said, I don't think the way to look at it, which is the way a lot of people seem to be doing, is to just say, yeah, whatever they did in 19, let's do the total opposite. If we rested guys then yeah, we need to play them right now. No, I mean, I don't think that's the case, because then somebody goes out there, God forbid, gets hurt, and then it's, and that's what happened in 19. Andrews got hurt in the back of the year. Mark Ingram got hurt in the back of the year. So, look, health is the number one priority for the Ravens right now, as it should be.
110%. And also this team has more balance than 2019. You have guys. If you want to take away the run, if that's what you choose to do as a defense, good luck, because then they're going to pass the ball, and they've shown you that they can do such. So you're going to have to pick your poison. And Lamar Jackson, at the end of the day, is still going to be the X factor, who is now a few years in terms of his career in the NFL. So there's a lot of growth that he's had over the years. There's a lot of growth that I'm sure Harbaugh has learned during what happened. And I just think that this is the best decision that needs to be made to make sure that this football team is ready in the divisional round. So I am with the rest. Cordell is with the rest. We believe that that is the best idea. If the Steelers win, okay, great. Hey, you don't get constellation prizes around here. The goal is the Super Bowl, not the goal is to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers after you've won the AFC North. Okay, so that's just what it's going to be, and I am completely okay with this decision. Now, we got to have a conversation. Do you think that they should add someone to their roster? We'll talk about that more here on Winning Drive. So as we know, Cordell, Dalvin Cook was released mutually by the Jets and potentially will be a free agent. And so, of course, there's been conversation because, as we know, before the season started in preseason, he was a free agent and he was being courted by the likes of Miami, the likes of the Jets. There was some chatter about if he could potentially be a fit in Baltimore. I think you and I have different opinions about this. And I'm going to let you start because I'm curious to know what your thoughts are if the Ravens decided to add Dalvin Cook to their roster.
Dalvin Cook, a name. He's a name. I'll give him that.
He's a name.
I don't think the production matches the name anymore. I thought Dalvin Cook, when the Vikings decided to move on from him, I thought he had little left to give. And the reason I thought that was because he just wasn't a guy that you could really depend on to get positive yardage more times than not. It's either going for 30 plus yards or it's going for probably under 3 yards. And so you look at him with the Jets this year, and granted, Breece Hall is there, and I think Breece Hall is a heck of a talent. So I don't have an issue with Dalvin Cook not starting over Breece Hall or not getting the opportunities that Breece Hall was getting when healthy. But even when Breece Hall wasn't there, especially earlier in the year, Dalvin Cook wasn't the guy. The Jets were reluctant to play him, and then when they did play him, I felt like I got to see why they were reluctant to play him. And all of that, plus the Ravens, we talked about Justice Hill's issues with the mesh point with Lamar in the past. I mean, how long has Justice Hill been here? How long has he and Lamar been on the same team with each other, practicing together? It was times in the offseason where Justice Hill's the only healthy back they had. And yet they have had their issues at times in the read option game. I think the Ravens ask a lot of their running backs, and I don't think it's an easy thing to have a running back jump in and just jump on his moving train and all of a sudden he's out there producing. Not to say he'd be a starter here either. He wouldn't be. He'd be kind of, I guess, the substitution for Melvin Gordon. But Melvin Gordon's been here all season. He knows the scheme. He has camaraderie with the guys. I just don't see the value in Dalvin Cook joining the team this late in the season. I don't think he changes anything. He doesn't change the trajectory of the season. He doesn't raise it by coming, and he doesn't drop it by not coming. I just think they'd be better. They're better off with what they have instead of bringing in somebody new that could possibly be a distraction, because then he's this, at least immediately the story is, oh, Dalvin Cook is added to Baltimore. And I just don't think he warrants that type of attention right now with what they're trying to accomplish.
Okay, I think that's a fair point. So I'm going to go into the other side of this.
I hate going first because of course you're going to have
somebody got to be on the other side of this. It's going to be me, right? I mean, that's what debates are about. When people have debates, somebody got to give one side, somebody got to give the other. So
All right.
Cordell is anti Dalvin Cook coming to the Ravens. Cool. I am willing to kick the tires on Dalvin Cook for a number of reasons. And look, I think that you can put him on the practice squad. You know, I don't think that he's going to be activated. A couple of reasons, right? The Ravens have already lost 2 running backs. They lost, Keaton Mitchell, and they lost J.K. Dobbins. And so currently we're looking at Justice Hill, who you know that I love, Gus Edwards, and Melvin Gordon. And look, Melvin Gordon, I'm still very cautious about Melvin Gordon because we know Melvin Gordon's past, right? Yes, Breece Hall is the starter for the Jets, but ultimately he only has 816 rushing yards for the season. That offensive line is very, very bad. And while Dalvin Cook has only had 214 yards for this year, the year before he had 1173 total yards and averaged 4.5 yards a carry. I'm sorry. You gotta, to me, this sounds like he's a product of the environment in which he's in. And the Jets aren't a good football team. And they definitely don't have a good offensive line. And they play on that bad turf in MetLife. So I just think that those factors, and when you look at his previous stints, prior to this year, Cordell, he's had over 1,100 yards in 4 consecutive seasons. So the drastic drop-off to me is not a Dalvin Cook issue. It's a New York Jets issue. And I just am willing to say, well, look, obviously we got 3 other guys here, right? But we know that the run game is very important to the Ravens in terms of what it is that they want to do. And I think that Dalvin Cook is still a very talented player. And I'm willing to at least add him to the practice squad. So in case there's somebody that is not going to be able to play, then, he could potentially come up and, help what this team does. I do agree with you that he can be boom or bust. But I do think that in this offense, he would have a better showing than what he did in New York for, the reasons that I've already mentioned. I'm really just here for the depth purposes. And again, I think personally, Dalvin Cook is probably better than Melvin Gordon. I understand that Melvin Gordon has been here all year. So I understand the logic of, okay, but he's been here since training camp. He knows the playbook, all those things. All of that is fair. But ultimately, I just want to make sure that if push comes to shove and if something happens, if there's an injury, you don't feel like, oh, no, this is really bad. I remember how everybody felt when they saw Keaton Mitchell go down. And, for me, I felt comfortable, with it because I felt like Justice Hill would be just fine. However, if, knock on wood, another running back goes down, then how are we going to feel? It is going to feel a little pinchy. You're going to feel a little stressed. And I think that Dalvin Cook is probably the best option that would be out there. So that is my argument for at least kicking the tires. At least I ain't saying you got to sign him. I'm just saying that you can kick the tires on Dalvin.
Yeah, I mean, and I hear that. And you make a lot of valid points. Dalvin, it's with running backs, the drop off can be sudden at times. You know what I'm saying? And I hear you on Dalvin's pass. I used to really. It's not that I have anything against Dalvin Cook. He's had a great career. I thought he had a really good career in Minnesota. It's something to be said though with the fact that Minnesota was able to move on from him when they did, and then he gets to New York. And I hear you on the no question, that offensive line is not good in New York. The offense in general is not good in New York. It's a one-dimensional offense. And I definitely agree that Dalvin Cook would have more production in this offense. But I think you could say that about pretty much every running back in the league, that they're going to probably thrive in this offense. So when you look at all of that, it becomes to the other stuff, you know what I'm saying? It becomes to the intangibles. Like I mentioned, Gordon being here all year, the fact of running backs, and now Lamar's got to get used to, Dalvin Cook, and Dalvin Cook's got to get used to Lamar on the mesh point, and all these different things, and how Todd Monken wants to do it. And that was one of the big things in the offseason, in training camp and stuff. Todd Monken and the way he likes to coach these guys. That was a big talking point at that time of the year. So I just think it's late in the year to play catch up. But I definitely hear you on depth, especially at the running back position. And if the Ravens want to get to where they want to be, you can't afford for an injury to be the
Right.
reason you don't get
Right.
there. So I
Yep.
definitely hear that. I guess for the Ravens, they would just need to weigh the pros and the cons. Is it valuable to add him to this roster right now? For me, I don't think it changes their trajectory with him being added. I just don't think the the noise that'll come with it is worth, because even if he is a practice squad guy, now everybody's, well, when is Dalvin Cook going to get in? I mean, we know what he can do. Let's put him in it. It's just a headache that nobody even then you who snaps is he going to take? Justice Hills, because it's always Hill that ends up being the guy that has to take the back seat. It always ends up working that way. So I don't know. I hear you, but I wouldn't do it, and we'll see what they do. Well, I've seen the
Yeah.
same rumors you probably seen, so we'll see.
At most, to me, he's an insurance policy. I don't think that I'm expecting Dalvin Cook to come in and have any impact unless he's called upon because someone is not able to play. That's really it for me.
And look, I'd take him over Owen Wright. Owen Wright, the other running back that's on the practice squad. I mean, yeah, I'd take Dalvin Cook over
sorry,
him.
Owen, we don't do no harm.
Right.
But Dalvin Cook, I gave you the numbers about Dalvin Cook last year. You got to at least check and see if he has anything left in the tank, Owen. So, it don't be no harm. But, yeah, for me, it's just nothing more than an insurance policy. I definitely am with you that I don't think he's, like, going to come in and, like, it's, basically if an injury happens, do you want somebody to be able to step up and you feel like you don't miss too much of a beat in that regard? And I think that Dalvin Cook would be the viable option. But like you said, we'll see how this goes. I mean, for now, it's still quiet. We ain't heard nothing. I don't think he's been picked up by anybody, but we'll see if someone find Miami could potentially be possible. Although I think that they're good with
they were
change.
a top 2 destination when he was in the off season, and that's obviously where he's from.
Depending on if Mostart is, going to be more injured, I feel like that's probably where they'd lean to. But if they feel like that Mostart is more of a just a couple weeks type of injury, maybe not. But it will be interesting to see how this unfolds as we get closer to the playoffs here. Let's talk about the preview of the Steelers game. Even though it doesn't mean anything to the Ravens, it still is going to happen. And we'll talk about the impact that the guys that are playing will have this coming Saturday. So again, as we know, the Ravens are sitting a good amount of their starters against the Steelers this weekend. Yes, it is a rivalry game. Most games that are played, if not all, are rival games this weekend. So, there's other teams and other divisions that have something to play for, but a lot of teams are resting their starters. The Steelers, however, are not, because they're trying to win to get into the playoffs. And Tyler Huntley, who we got to say, Pro Bowl Tyler Huntley, okay? Pro Bowl Tyler Huntley will be starting. Tyler Huntley had one pass last week, and it was caught for a touchdown, and he had a perfect passer rating, Cordell. So what we're not going to do is act like Tyler Huntley can't go out there and win football games. And look, Tyler has played, we know, at the end of both 2021 and 2022 to end the season, although he did end up 2-2 in the regular season. And then we know that they lost the playoff game eventually in Cincinnati. He is capable of winning football games. So let's preview real quick how we think that this game will go, being as though the Ravens are resting so many guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Ravens have a shot to win. Like I said earlier, they beat them in 2019 with a backup quarterback. And, it could definitely happen again. And I do think we'll see some starters on the field. How much? Who knows? Probably not very long. You'll have a couple of guys out there trying to get incentives. But other than that, I don't think you'll see guys playing into the fourth quarter. But hey, in 2019, there were guys, starters that played into the fourth quarter. Peters and Marlon Humphrey among those guys that pretty much played that whole game. So I think that the Steelers are desperate, and they found a way to win their last 2 games. I am curious to see how hurt Najee Harris is, who's been on the injury report this week. But Jalen Warren obviously is just fine if it's just him by himself. And the Ravens have kind of struggled with some of those smaller, strong, quick running backs, like the Kyron Williams and Jerome Fords of the world. They've struggled with some of these types of backs. So I think Warren is probably a guy that they don't want to see a lot of on Saturday.
They're going to see him anyway. So
yeah, they definitely will. They definitely will.
Although Najee has played better the last few weeks, he's still their best running back in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean Warren is a stud, and I do like Najee. I still like Najee. I think not obviously Najee's vision needs to improve, and among other things, but I still think Najee could be a really good back in this league. That said, that's what the Steelers are doing. They're running the ball down your throat. They're running it down your throat, and that is one of the reasons why I would be cautious if I'm the Ravens about playing some of these front seven defensive guys, or trying to figure out how much I'm going to play these guys, because this is going to be a physical game. Pittsburgh forces it to be that way. I mean, that's how the Ravens play anyway. But when these two teams get together, you already know how it goes. So there won't be any dancing around or just trying to get out of here healthy. Pittsburgh is coming out there looking to play a real football game, despite what everybody in Baltimore may think about this game. So I think Baltimore still has a shot to win. I'm probably still going to pick them, to be honest with you. I'm probably still going to pick I'm probably still going to pick them. I think even with Pittsburgh playing better over the last couple of weeks, I don't trust the Steelers right now. I don't. Mason Rudolph, I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed by Mason Rudolph. I'm not really necessarily a part of you guys' whole rivalry. That I leave that to the fans and you guys, but I don't want to see Pittsburgh in the postseason. I don't want to see Mason Rudolph or Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett or whoever.
You're saying this because you're not interested in the construct of the team, not because you're concerned. I want to be clear.
No, not concerned. In no way am I concerned. I'm concerned about falling asleep on the couch watching the game. That's what I'm concerned about if Pittsburgh is in the postseason. I have no concern. I don't think they're a threat to anybody. Their style of play for some teams is a problem, but in the postseason, when you're playing all legit teams, I don't need to see that team in that mix. I'm sorry, I don't want to see that. So I'm picking the Ravens just for my own personal preference to not have to see Pittsburgh in January. I think Tyler Huntley and those guys get it done. I think this offense will still find a way to make it happen. I do think guys like Bateman may get a lot of run on Saturday, which would be good to see. So I think they'll have no problem scoring, and I still think defensively they'll be sound. They obviously, when they're missing all of their key guys out there for the majority of the game, it won't be the same. But I still think this team is going to be good enough to beat them.
Yeah, I really, look, I really am confident with a lot of the backups. This would be an opportunity for us to see a lot of guys like Charlie Kolar. I would like to think gets a lot of tight end looks, which I think that he should. He's earned that opportunity in my opinion. I would think Melvin Gordon would get more burn in this type of game, which is something that I think would be good for him as well. Tavius Robinson, I'm interested in to see what he's going to look like defensively. Maybe Trenton Simpson gets in and get some burn. So there's guys that I am interested in seeing how they play and how they show up. I'm sure Ben Cleveland will probably be playing again because Kevin Zeitler is still dealing with an injury anyway. So you'll start seeing guys like Fa'alele and Ben Cleveland and those such and sorts. I am interested in seeing how well this backup team will play against the Steelers, because depth is important. And even if it's not collectively good, I'm from an individual standpoint, I'm just curious to know how this will all work out for the Ravens, because you just don't know, when someone, needs to step up. You need to know who's going to be able to step up when their number is called. And so this is going to be the game that shows us who is going to step up and who's not. So there's a lot of things that, yes, I know, the Steelers are this, but there's a lot of interesting tidbits from, a backup perspective that we will be watching and looking forward to when we watch this game, because these are guys that, they're backups, but they tend to get in the games anyway. Like we saw Tavius Robinson get in the game last week. We saw Charlie Kolar get in the game. So they're getting in the games anyway, but now they're just going to have extended time like this was a preseason game. And so I'm just curious to know how they'll play against a Steelers team that is reeling and trying to get into the playoffs.
And a lot of these guys, I think also to your point, like Tyler Huntley is pretty much auditioning for his next team at this point. Trenton Simpson, they want to look at him because, Queen probably won't be here. So you got to see what you have in a guy like Trenton Simpson to see how you're going to approach this offseason. Malik Harrison, it'd be a great game to see him out there. He hasn't been at practice this week. So that's unfortunate because I think this is a game that they really love to get a lot out of him. But yeah, I think there's going to be quite a few guys that this game is going to have an impact on their next season for them individually and in some ways for the Ravens.
I'm confident that this Ravens team can hang around. I mean, we saw what they were doing last year when they played the Steelers with Tyler Huntley, and I just think that Tyler Huntley is there's less stress for him in this situation because he's not playing as the starter because Lamar is out. You know what I'm saying? He's playing because Lamar is resting. So I think that there's the stress of him playing at a high level. He's going to want to play at a high level regardless. Let me be clear. But the stress factor of, I got to play well because, we're trying to get into the playoffs is a different scenario. And he's probably able to play a little bit more relaxed for this game on Sunday. So I think that Huntley can do just fine, and I think he will. And I'm with you. I think that the Ravens find a way to win this one in a close game. On Justin Tucker, welcome back to the party, because we know, last week we ain't see a whole lot of you except for when you was kicking extra points, but hey, that's a good thing. So maybe this will be the Justin Tucker show, and maybe he will find a way to win this one for the Ravens at the end of regulation. I think that the Ravens find a way to pull this one off and potentially get the Pittsburgh Steelers out of here and out of the playoffs, hopefully for Cordell's sake, because he said he already bored if they he already bored. Ladies and gentlemen, he does not want to see the Pittsburgh Steelers for fear of boredom in the wild card weekend. Before we go, we got to shout out the 7 Pro Bowlers that the Ravens have. What was your most surprising one, if any, or were you not surprised?
I'm always slightly surprised when Kevin Zeitler isn't selected. I agree.
I feel
like a large portion of this process goes to the voting of coaches and players. So, I feel like Kevin Zeitler is the type of guy that coaches would love to watch film of. So I'm a little surprised that he didn't make it. I'm not really surprised that Geno didn't make it. I mean, I could see why some people may be surprised, but Geno's just not a household name yet. And when you look at guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick, who is having a pretty good year himself and also has the name to carry it. This is a popularity contest. And on the flip side, you look at Justin Tucker. I mean, I don't know. As great as I think Justin Tucker is, I don't know if Tucker makes it, if Dustin Hopkins probably is healthy or something like that. So I don't know. It's always some guys that you feel like could have made it, or, in this case in Tucker, maybe somebody you think snuck in a little bit. But all in all, seven Pro Bowlers.
It's probably on name for Tuck. He's still, it's probably on name for Tuck.
And that's like I said with Minkah Fitzpatrick, and there's no shame in that. I mean, it's not like Tucker sucked this year. He just didn't have the Tucker type of year that we're used to having, especially from 50 plus yards. But other than that, 7 Pro Bowlers. A shout out to all the young guys, the first timers making it. Happy for Patrick Queen. Happy for Matt Abike, Kyle Hamilton, Linderbaum, all of those guys. Obviously, Lamar making it, no surprise. We mentioned Tucker, and I'm trying. And Roquan, of course. He's got to be on there. So yeah, I thought they got it right for the most part.
My favorite thing is that that they release some statements and everybody's like, yes, thank you so much for the Pro Bowl, but I ain't interested in that. Hopefully we'll be at the Super Bowl and not be playing at the Pro Bowl, and I'm with them on that. So shout out to everyone that made the Pro Bowl. And again, yes, there was a Zeitler to me. Yes, is a huge swipe. But for the most part, I definitely think that they got it right. So congrats to all of the 7 guys that were Pro Bowl eligible. We want to thank you all for listening. We'll be recapping the final game of the regular season after the Ravens and Steelers game. So we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about what to expect as we move into the playoffs on our next episode. We want to thank you all for listening. So from Cordell to me, this is Winning Drive.